Our guest for the next 1 hour to have a conversation about, the socioeconomic needs that are pressing the people of Kenya is Professor Iraki. He's an economist and a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Prof, good to see you again.
Good morning, and how are you?
Very well, thank you.
I heard the price of oil has gone down.
Well, it's hivyo.
And I'm told it is because ODM experts are in the government.
See?
That's what one governor said this morning.
That's a governor who said it.
My head is spinning.
Tumeingia kwa serikali, bei ya mafuta imeshuka.
My head is spinning.
Opio and I, like that. So there's Opio here.
I didn't want to name names, but you have done it on my behalf.
He's the energy minister. And the other one is at the National Treasury. So we are looking at how we balance these things and make things work.
Like a pair of scissors.
Kabisa. Scissors cut. Now they've cut the price of fuel.
That is it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Karibu sana, Prof.
Asante sana. I've not been here for a very long time.
Yes.
The place looks very superb.
Mm-hmm.
Your smiles have not faded.
Yes.
And I'm sure we are going to have a good conversation.
Yes, we will.
Not just among the three of us, but with our fellow countrymen.
Very good.
Wherever they are on this small planet.
Yes. Siti.
Yes.
Welcome, Prof, with today's proverb.
Yes, our proverbs for this week come from the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Friendship, we call it friendship, but without sincerity.
Friendship. We call it friendship, but without sincerity.
That sounds like hypocrisy.
Yes. It is hypocrisy.
If you're afraid and there's no sincerity, that cannot be friendship. How old is that proverb?
It's ancient. It was coined a long time ago.
With all the artificial intelligence and all the technology and all the knowledge, how come we don't come up with new proverbs?
Well, I guess the thing about proverbs is they seem to point to a certain...
Siti, don't fall into this trap. Prof, what's your interpretation of this proverb? This man is diverting.
Oh, no. I understand what he was doing. But
the proverb?
He knows better than anybody else
time.
that the reason why proverbs are the way they are is because they point to a truth that defies time and age and space.
So maybe what we think is common sense now will be wisdom and proverbs maybe 100 years from now.
Yes.
So I'm impatient.
Make it 200 years if you like.
But I think the interpretation of this proverb is very simple. That any friendship should be based on sincerity. It should not be transactional. It should not be based on I give you, you give me. So once you remove sincerity from friendship and from service delivery and from everything else, it becomes something else.
So if it's transactional, it is not friendship?
No. I give you the money, you go. When you go to a petrol station, you don't need to know the name of the petrol station attendant or the owner of that petrol station. You get your fuel and go.
You pay.
That's not how friendship is supposed to be. It's supposed to be sincerity.
It's a good one. So some of the things that are said today will become, words of wisdom in the future. Like, usiguze mulima.
That's not from me. There's one I heard yesterday from Gen Z.
Yes.
I don't know whether they got it from that. You don't know you're in a pyramid scheme until you are at the bottom of the pyramid. Never thought about that. So that will probably be a future proverb.
That's what it occurs to you clearly. One of our listeners are watching on the YouTube live stream has got jokes. Says the Chief Justice has actually got jokes. So the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is going to court to try and stop Mulima kuguzwa.
Yes.
And he has asked the Chief Justice, please appoint a 3-judge bench so that you can hear my case that wants to stop Mulima kuguzwa. Chief Justice says, sawa sawa, I agree. I am going to appoint the following judges to hear this case. The Honorable Justice Eric Ogola, the Honorable Lady Justice Frida Mugambi, and the Honorable Justice Anthony Mulima.
Mulima Mugudu.
CJ's got jokes.
That's a real money joke.
Prof, a lot's happening. So, the price of fuel has come down. Okay. We were talking about it earlier and saying, we've just been reporting that, the rates of inflation have come down. That's why even the Central Bank Monetary Committee has decided, let's start bringing down our interest rates. right? Because inflation has come down really, really much. And City asked me, but has the cost of living come down? So I ask you.
That's the thing that is spinning my head. The reason why inflation is going down is because people have no money. If you have no money, there will be no demand for goods and services. So if I'm a supplier of goods or services, how do I attract people to come and buy whatever I'm selling? Bring down the prices. So I don't think the inflation is going down because the economy is doing very well. It is simply because people have no money.
Really?
Do you live in this country?
I do.
Yeah. And your neighbors have money?
I don't know.
That's why I'm asking you whether you live in this country.
People don't discuss money.
No.
I'm still the same way I was. I didn't have money.
Maybe that's why you don't notice that. But if you look at the way the economy has been performing the last maybe 1 year, I think the economy has not grown as fast as expected. Even the institutions, I think IMF and Central Bank are predicting a lower economic growth rate.
Yeah.
And that's a clear indicator that because the economy is not growing as fast as expected, the demand has not gone up. The demand for goods and services. And if the demand has not gone up, then the prices don't go up as expected, and we say there is less inflation. So that should be a matter of concern because the foreign inflation can be an indicator that the economy is not doing as well as expected.
Do you think that's how they look at it? Do you think there are other economists, especially in the National Treasury, or even in the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank, who actually see that as a possible reality?
I think the reason why they are very joyous about that is, you remember there was a time the central bank raised the interest rate by about almost 2-3%.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they really wanted to hit on inflation. So maybe in the long run that has worked. But it's not just that the inflation, that the interest rate was so high that inflation had to come down. But there are also other fundamental issues. Like if you look at the aftermath of GZ protests, I think there were some economic consequences. And one of them was the economic slowdown. And when the economy is not doing very well, the demand for goods and services go down. And inflation is subdued.
Yeah.
So it's a multiplicity of factors. It's not just the fact that interest rate was up. Interest rate going up had an effect, but there are other factors that have affected that.
Why were the goods expensive?
So again?
Why were the goods expensive then?
I think there's a question everybody has been asking, because when Kenya Kwanza government came to power, the price of goods kept going up.
Yeah.
And one reason was that the exchange rate was not very good.
Yeah.
So because the sharing was very weak, people compensate by raising the prices. So that was one factor. And the other factor is anytime we have a transition from one government to another, there's a lot of freedom. People won't take advantage before things settle up. So you can gauge the prices, you can raise the prices before people complain, then things start stabilizing. So, and you can check that anytime there's a transition in government, things always become a bit unstable, whether it is prices, whether it is inflation, whether it is unemployment, things always jag up, then they stabilize.
Then they stabilize. So we are at the stabilization phase now.
I think that is that could be happening. Now we are getting stabilized. We hope that we are not going to get destabilized as we think about 2027.
There are those who say that whenever we have a new government, uncertainty also plays a role in bringing about some of these roller coaster things that we see in our economy.
That's exactly what I'm saying, because you don't know, when you get a new government, you don't know what is going to be a monetary policy, their fiscal policy, how much borrowing they are going to do, what taxes they are going to come up with, whether Murima is going to be Guzo. There are so many things that are uncertain about a new government. And that has an effect on the economy. Because as much as people claim that the government has no business in business, the government are out of business in business. When you think of taxes, when you think about new regulations, when you think about new laws, all those affect the economy.
They do.
So with time, the government policies settle and the economy also settles.
You know, one of the things that, of course, those in government would be coming out now to tell us is we promised that we are going to stabilize this economy.
Yes.
Right? We came in, the dollar was doing the sing-saw. We came in, the price of oil was just going up. We came in, the price of goods and commodities were going up. In fact, people were going onto the streets complaining that the cost of living is high. And we said, give us time. In fact, the president said, give me 12 months at least, and I'll sort these things out. So we came with these interventions, fertilizer subsidy here on one side and these things on the other. We even came in with the, cooking oil subsidy. Because of all these efforts, you see the results now? The results are inflation has gone down to the lowest point even before Uhuru came into office. If you look at the dollar price, the shilling has stabilized and it's doing well right now at about 130, around there. It was threatening to cross over 200. We have stabilized it. And I told you, 125 maybe. See, 130, not so bad.
I think your argument...
So trust the process.
I can tell you that some of the happiest people with economic events taking place are politicians. And I quoted one saying that the experts from ODM actually stabilizing the price of oil. But if you look at oil, I'll start with oil. The demand for oil from China has gone down. The peak demand for oil because of summer season is over. So the demand of oil has gone down despite some tensions in the Middle East. And that is cascading to here, to this country. But you see, not many people have time to check what is happening in the oil market globally. So when politicians say it is because of our effort, we believe it. If you look at, again, the reason why inflation is going down, apart from stabilizing the economy, the rains have been very good. And two things that drive our inflation is rain, that by extension means the price of food, and oil. So if the price of oil is going down, the price of good is going down because it has been leaning, inflation will go down. And the fact that politically things are stable. But as a politician, you always take credit. So let's not just look at what...
The rain came.
Yes.
But the rain found the people of Kenya prepared.
Yes.
They had seeds.
That's
they
true.
had fertilizer.
That's true.
That's government intervention.
So the government intervention is about what you think of a typical farmer. What do you need to grow your crops? Fertilizer? What else?
Seeds.
Seed? What else?
Water.
So what comes from the government?
Seed and fertilizer.
Is that, if you look at the cost of agriculture, what percentage is seed and fertilizer? Is it 50%, 30%?
Somewhere, I don't know.
So I think those are just some of the two factors that bring up agriculture. The other factors.
Yeah.
But the problem is the other factors are not given credit because nobody gives farmers credit for digging with their hands.
Yeah.
Nobody gives farmers credit for taking care of their cattle. So politicians will focus on what gives them vote and credit. But you don't focus on what does not give you credit. So I think inflation has been brought down by a multiplicity of factors. It's both internal and external. But politicians should not take too much credit, in my opinion.
You know, the point you make is a valid one, but we know what politicians will do and what they want to do is not very difficult to figure out. Anything that makes them look good, they will jump on it. But let's look at the Kenyan economy and the reality of it. You mentioned at the beginning of the show that one of the things that is a reality in Kenya right now is people simply do not have money. And if you don't have money, it means there's no money to spend. What are the long-term effects of this reality?
Maybe even before we go to this long-term reality. Since the government controls the price of oil, there's nobody who can come on air or tell us that the price of oil will not be lower if it was free market. Because the government controls the price. So the price went up by 8. Somebody might ask, why not by 9? Why not by 10? Because the government has a lot of leeway in controlling that price. So because it can control the price, it becomes a political issue, not an economic issue. So I think we need to free the market. Then we can see whether it will be lower or higher. Then we can say the government is working on price. But now we cannot control. We have no basis. Because if we had one country where the prices were open, there was no control, another one where they are controlled, we can compare and contrast. But for Kenya, we don't have that for now. So this reality you are talking about, when the economy is subdued, when the economy is not growing, everybody suffers because if there is no demand for goods and services for your business, you close. If there is no rising demand for goods and services, then there are no jobs. So I am very concerned when the economy is subdued the way it is, because there are long-term consequences. We get jobs because the economy is growing. And the economy grows because there is demand for goods and services, either internally or externally. So we need to think, how do we rejuvenate our economy so that there's money here? There's money in the economy, either coming from internally or externally. And that's why I've always talked about thinking about the external market. If you look at Korea, it's about 50 million people, the same population as Kenya. But they have a global market for their cars, for electronics. Same with Japan. So can we think about how to build external markets so that the demand for our goods, the demand for our services, the economy is going to rejuvenate?
The issue around the economy and not just the slowing down of the economy, but the stagnation of it. As you spoke, the thing that came to mind is KRA, because we're discussing KRA this morning. It also means, therefore, that KRA will collect less money.
That's true.
So it means the government will have less to spend.
That's true.
So if the government budgets the way it budgets, it means they will tell us that they need to borrow more.
They're already doing that.
To meet the deficit.
That's true.
Now my question, what is it that stops the government from actually spending just what we collect? It's something that Eric and I have discussed at length, and we can't arrive at an answer. Now that you're here, we'd like you to jump in and help us understand this.
I think that we have had that debate for the last several years. Yes. Why don't you live with the means? Yes. With your means. The two of you, when you're at home, if you have no money, you probably cut down on certain things. Mm. And the government should do the same. If they don't have enough money, they should cut down certain services and certain projects. But here comes the problem. And this is where you need to put yourself in the shoes of the government. If you cut down expenditure on projects, your voters will be unhappy. Remember, you are voted in because you made certain promises. I'll build roads, I'll build hospitals, I'll build airports, and so on. So if you don't build this one, you lose political mileage. So as a politician, you should always ask yourself, which side of the bread is buttered? Now look at the other way to reduce cost. And one of the, I think, senior advisors to the president talked about that one time. The easiest way to reduce government expenditure is to bring down the number, the bloated, so-called employment. Mm. So
the government payroll.
Yes, that's a better way to put it. Now, if you started reducing government payroll, can you imagine about the political consequences of that? You hear people saying watu wetu wanamalizwa.
For sure.
Usinguza watu wetu. Mm. So as a politician, you always have the next election in mind. You don't want people to start rising up against you saying that you are sacking people. And by the way, can you imagine sacking people when there is such a high level of unemployment? Because when there is such a high level of unemployment, every job matters.
Yeah, it is true.
So you need to be a very bold politician to make bold decisions now, so that in the future you can be telling people, I told you. But our voters are patient.
If you don't make that bold decision now, the situation that we describe will be exacerbated, it will get worse.
That is my worry.
So if it gets worse, the position that the politician dreads will be worse. So which is better? To deal with it now, or to wait when it gets to the point where it's untenable, where you actually really have no choice, because now you have a choice.
You kick the can down the road.
And I can assure you, if you remember how Gen Z protests were, it points how things can become bad if they are not managed. So if I were in the shoes of politicians, I would make a bold decision. Even if I'm not elected in 2027, future generation will pay tribute to my bold decisions. But not many politicians think beyond 5 years.
No, they don't.
You think about the 2027, then after that, things will sort themselves out.
Very many things happening, Prof was telling us, the government has got to just juggle very many costs and all, and everything that's happening across the country. As we get into the conversation, CT, I've got greetings for you from Isaac, who is in Bratislava, Slovakia.
Thank you very much, Isaac. Nimeshukuru sana.
You respond by clapping. That's what we used to do when we were young.
Well, let me be young.
Yes, that's it.
All the way in Slovakia.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in, Isaac. So you had asked a question to Prof. Repeat the question.
Well, the question I had to ask was based on a precedent that we have in the country. When you talk about bold decisions. If my memory serves me right, something happened in the Kibaki era. There was a year in which we didn't have any new development projects. A year. Not 6 months, a year. Which means a lot of the spending that we see governments after the Kibaki government have engaged in did not exist. But it's during that period that things like the ETR and all these mechanisms for ensuring that we mop up every monies that the KRA can mop up came into being. And then it was implemented. Now, the net result of that particular process was something that I didn't think I would ever see in my lifetime. A point where Kenya can actually collect enough money to run its affairs, its own affairs, without necessarily looking to ask who it is they can borrow from. Now, I call it a precedent because it means it has been done. We have said we are not spending money on new development projects.
Yep, that's a promise, actually a pledge that was made by the cabinet this year, that, we are going to do two things. One, we're going to have a zero-based budgeting, and you'll explain that, Prof. And we are heading towards running a budget that is balanced.
It's interesting that you are referring to the government of the late Mwai Kibaki. Because in 10 years into Mwai Kibaki's government, if all you can remember, people had forgotten there was something called IMF. People had forgotten there was something called World Bank.
Yes.
We were probably funding about 95% of our budget.
Yes.
And when somebody said Najivunia kuwa Mukenya, it actually made sense. Because you cannot be a very proud father if you are sponsored by other people. Or you cannot be a very proud owner of any asset if you are sponsored. So people feel very proud when they can take care of their lives. And that's what makes hustlers in this country very proud that they can take care of their lives. So the question has always been, how did IMF and others come back? Because that's a question you should be asking. I think one of the questions, one of the reasons why IMF and World Bank are coming back is because we invited them. I don't think IMF brings themselves to a country. You invite them.
No, you look for them.
You look for them because you want to change your economic situation. You don't have enough. You cannot raise enough money for your budget. So I agree with you that zero budgeting is good, where you make sure that the revenue and the expenditures balance. The question is how to do that without running a deficit, without affecting your political base, without sacking people, without taking people home. But Kibaki's era showed it is possible. And there's no reason why we cannot do it now. One of the biggest problems that we face when you think about reducing the government expenditure is people say, instead of reducing government expenditure, why don't you reduce corruption? Because I think that's the biggest problem everybody talks about. If we target corruption in this country, we reduce corruption in this country, I think all these budget deficits we are talking about would disappear. Again, that calls for people who are bored. There should be no sacred cows. If you misappropriate public funds, you should have consequences. But as long as there are no consequences for getting away with the public funds, we are going to keep on talking about balanced budget. We are going to keep on talking about reducing the costs, about making sure that we freeze certain expenditures. But as long as people see that money is leaking elsewhere, I don't think we are going to make progress. So my argument is, let's have a balanced budget, but also, as we think of reducing the costs, let's also reduce the waste through corruption and other necessary expenditures.
In terms of the realities that Kenyans face, even as we look at, I keep remembering this, in those Kibaki years when he had frozen, let's not have any new development project, let's finish the ones that we had. Our economy has started growing. It's at now 3%, it's going by 3%, by 4%, and so on and so forth. I remember opposition leaders led by the leader of official opposition, Uhuru Kenyatta then, holding a press conference and asking people, wewe, uko na pesa kwa mfuko? Hii economy wanasema is growing. Can you feel it? Right? Those are the questions being asked then. And those are people, that's how we ended up with people still feeling disillusioned. When Alfred Mutua launched the campaign, Najivunia kuwa Mkenya as government spokesman, people coined it to Navumilia kuwa Mkenya.
I remember that.
They were not feeling the kujivunia bits. Later is when you look back and you're like, actually, yeah. So in the thick of things, people don't realize when things are getting better. The frog doesn't realize that the water is actually getting cooler,
but you see,
and not hotter.
As a politician, as a leader, one of your biggest tasks, and the president alluded to that the other day, is how you communicate that to the people. You know, I can call you Mujinga and you start laughing, but I can call you Mujinga and you slap me back because of the way I put it. So I think communication is very important. If you believe that the decisions you are making today will have a positive effect 5-10 years from now, the way you communicate really matters. So I think we can make sacrifices as individuals, as institutions, as government, but how do you communicate that to the ordinary people? How do you make people believe that I have no money today, but I'll have more money tomorrow? And I think that's where Kibaki succeeded, by making us believe that tomorrow is better than today.
But
We
Prof,
don't live on hope, but
Prof.
there must be reality, yes.
Prof, I like what you've said, but consider, what had we come from? When people spoke about having money, the reference was the previous government of Moi. So,
Yes.
so what did they mean having money? Was there a lot of liquidity in the
Siku za
country?
Moi, pesa ilikuwa inafika hapa kwa watu.
Precisely.
Huyu amefungia pesa huko juu.
Right. But there's something else that happened in the Kibaki era that we must not forget, because we had forgotten about it, completely forgotten about it in the 24 years of the Moi era. And that was, you didn't need an individual to give you money. You could go to an institution and get money. And it was possible because the government was not borrowing from the banks. So banks had to create kiosks to beg people to borrow.
Yep.
Literally, I'm saying it because that's what it was. You found these small kiosks everywhere.
Yep.
And banks were giving loans. So Kibaki understood the only way you do this thing is you institutionalize it, you structure it, you actually, that is when people were able to do things that previously they were not able to do. There was something called a personal loan. A lot of people's lives changed because of that one commodity called a personal loan.
I think you need to be even more bold than that, because if you look at the growth of the economy, the economy is not grown by the government. It's grown by you and me.
Yeah.
So any economy in the world, in fact, if you ask, does the government anywhere own a shamba? The government doesn't own a shamba. So if you look at any service, any product that is sold in this country, it is produced by you people like you and me. So that's why access to credit is very important. I can get credit from banks, from my neighbors, from my relatives, wherever I want, so that I can put that money into economic productivity. So the question you should be asking now is credit easily available? Remember, because the government is not getting enough taxes, the government is also borrowing like you and me. And who doesn't want to borrow from the government? Who doesn't want to lend the government money? So there's some crowding out effect. So we expect that one of the things to turn out the economy is to make credit more easily available to you and me, because we are the people who run the economy. But you should also have mentioned that during Kibaki era, something else happened that was very important. Self-dependency. He said, no Harambe. So people aren't, I don't need to depend on you to do something. I can do it myself. And that was a very positive change in this country, that people started realizing that things can happen. I can do something. I don't need to rely on my neighbors or my friends and so on. So those are small things that are happening in this country that makes us believe that things are possible. Things can be done. So what's happening today? Instead of credit growing in productive areas, we're having credit growing in Ifuriza. Now, if you go and take a taxi nowadays, the guy will tell you, "Sinilipe na M-Pesa because in Ifuriza."
Yeah.
So we need to focus on areas of economy that matters and give us jobs, that give us development, and you see an effect. But we must be patient, and that vision must be communicated by our leaders, that today might be painful, but tomorrow can be better.
But then, just like you said, because of having to balance, even after being pushed by the Gen Z to cut back expenditure on the budget, the government was unable to cut back expenditure to 3.6 trillion shillings as previous. It still has to spend 3.9 trillion shillings. By the end of the year, we'll be up to 4.2 trillion. That's for sure. And where is that extra money coming from? The domestic market is playing a huge part of it, which is now where the government is just borrowing and we are not being lent money. Survey released yesterday by the Central Bank of Kenya is actually showing that banks are holding on to their cash and not lending to individuals and businesses. They are preferring to give it to government. And that's why SACCOs are now leading in lending to people.
That's what I said a few minutes ago.
So
But
now,
the government
how does
competing
this?
with you and me.
How does the government now balance this? Like you said, this government has got to balance between the political interests, the realities of the life it's living.
You know, that's a very, very scaring report when you say that banks are holding money instead of lending to people like you and me, because they want to let the government because more secure. Now, remember this, if you're a bank and you have 1 billion to lend, it is so efficient to let it to one government rather than splitting it into 1 million people, and you have an account, you have to monitor it, you have to follow up.
Different risk profiles.
So from an operational point of view, it makes sense to let the government. But from an economic point of view, it makes more sense to let that money to other people, because you are multiplicity of creative people, ingenious people who will do different things to turn out the economy. So the question should be, how do we encourage people to borrow? People must feel confident that tomorrow is better than today. Because if I get a loan from the bank, it might take me 10 years to repay it. And the only way I will be able to take that risk is to believe that tomorrow is better than today. I will get some returns. I will invest. Whatever I buy will be useful. It will help me make more money. So let's start also by building the confidence in the economy. And if I look at, for example, the U.S. campaign, I listened to Kamala Harris. I listened to Donald Trump. I always sense a message of hope, a message of confidence, a message that tomorrow's America will be better than today. And that's what we should be hearing from our leaders, from the MCAs up to the president, that tomorrow is better than today. But not just a message, but telling us this is what we should do. Credit should be available, easily available.
I was with some Bokusu friends over the weekend, and they insisted, she's not Kamala Harris, she's Kamala. Kamala Harris. So here we are, Prof. The people in the economy would like to be able to access credit. People would like to be able to access capital so that they can try out businesses, they can do the things that they'd like to do so that they can improve their own lives. And the government knows this. Everybody knows this.
That's true.
Right? Even the banks know, I mean, if we lent to the public, it would help grow the economy. And if we lent to the government, the money, they'll pay us back and all those things. But nobody's doing it.
Because of that uncertainty, that confidence I'm talking about. If we are sure that the economy is going to do very well in the next 10 years, and people believe it, sometimes we believe things are bad even when they are good.
Prof,
people had confidence in the economy.
Are you suggesting that people are not borrowing because they don't have? People are trying to borrow, but the banks are putting all these stumbling blocks. I'll lend you the money at 25%. That's
the question to be asking. Why is the credit rate, why is the interest rate so high? Is it because the banks are greedy? Is it because banks don't believe in us? One of the problems we are having now is that when the economy is doing this badly, as a bank, I would find it very risky to lend to individuals, because they will start a business that might not go very far, that might flop. So I'm very cautious. And if I have to lend you, I have to put it at a very high interest rate so that if Kamau fails, that can be paid by Onyango or somebody else. I'm not talking about Murima. But people are thinking about the risk. Banks are thinking about the risk. And they're in business, so they don't want to take a very big risk. That's why they are focusing on the government, which is less risky.
Okay.
But if we build confidence in the economy.
In the banks.
Confidence in the economy. And people believe that things will be better tomorrow. The banks have no problem lending money to Kamau, Joroge, Onyango, and Hamara. To easily do that.
So essentially, the government, the banks, when looking at the elements of risk in their business, they look at the economy and they will decide that this economy is not good for business, neither is it good for new businesses. So lending money, the likelihood of this money not returning is very high.
And look at the non-performing loans. They have been going up.
Yep.
So why take more risk? Give it to the government, which will give you money with the interest. Even the money that was lent to Idi Amin government was paid back. That's the beauty about the government. You always get back your money.
But also, Kenyan banks are accustomed to making money from government. And this is something that, if we think this is an era where, in the Moi era, interest rose up to even something like 40%. So this is nothing, believe me. But there is a problem with that thinking, because banks move away from their fundamentals of their business.
I have a solution for that.
Yes.
There's a rumor that has been circulating in this country for a very long time, that Kenya is overbanked. One way to reduce the interest rates is let's have more banks. They will compete and the rates will go down. Now about 5 banks control 70% of the Kenyan market. So there's no competition. I don't know why we don't have...
What do they call that? An oligopoly?
Yes. So why don't we have, for example, community banks? So that if I go to my village, there's a small bank.
Yeah.
Like the way SACCOs have been doing. So if we had more banks, they would compete. And we also need to have more focused banks. A bank maybe for agriculture, a bank maybe for construction, so that if I'm running a business, I know the bank too. Now banks do everything. And they have made everybody convince this country that this country is overbanked. We don't know to start new banks.
Essentially, we are suggesting in a conspiratorial manner that the big banks are not in favor of other banks coming into the market and competing with them.
And they're still making more money.
That's why they make so more money. You check the results of other banks in the world.
It's almost criminal because in the midst of the financial woes of this country, Eric and I talk about this every day. We look at the profits, you say, "Eish!"
And they make money when the economy is doing well, when the economy is doing very badly.
Yeah.
They're always making money.
Arguably, they have shareholders. Arguably, they're a business. Arguably, they're supposed to make money. But that imbalance, unfortunately,
It's a bit high.
No, it cannot be justified by what I've just said.
So that's why we want credit that's easily available to the people who have ideas.
Yeah, but that can only happen when you have a government that ensures that it does that. Because if you have a government that's competing with us for the same credit, we can't compete.
Maybe that's what's happening. Even the central bank report is indicating that more and more people are going to SACCOs.
Yes.
And of course, the other place where they're going to is the microfinance institutions.
And Shyrocks.
And so you're seeing now the establishment of another credit market that is outside of these big banks that is developing.
Which is good because now maybe banks will behave when they see there's competition.
You know, Prof, when we saw banks creating what I call kiosks, it was that wake-up call in that era of the Kibaki government, because suddenly there was no government to sell money to.
That's true. That's very true.
So they went back to their core business and they started looking for individuals with whom they could do business. Now tell me, in that era, surely, the default rates were not anywhere. The default rates we speak of now did not happen then.
But the economy was vibrant, it was growing.
Precisely, the economy was growing. Yeah. So in this era, when someone tells me the economy is growing, I really have to wonder what we're talking about.
In fact, that's the question everybody asks me. You're an economist? Yeah, tell me, if the economy is growing, where is the money? Because
actually, Prof, where's the growth?
What answer do you give?
I usually tell them that the economy is growing, but because of inequality, some people are getting money, others are not getting. And some of the growth is driven by big projects that do not always have trickle-down effect to Wanjiko and others. But what we're looking for is a balanced growth so that everybody has a stake. During Kibaki era, Mama Mboga could tell you things are good. Sophisticated businessmen in the corporate world would tell you things are good. I think now there's a lot of imbalance, that some people are doing very well, others are not doing very well.
You know, there's a shift that happened that I think has carried on in this era that I must speak of as I see it. There's something that had not been assumed in an earlier time, that indigenous Africans could do certain businesses. Now, I look at something like Equity Bank. It's an African bank, Kenyan. The shareholding now is different, but it's an African bank. I look at Family Bank, okay? These are banks that grew. They're indigenous.
That's true.
Everything about it was local. If foreigners came and bought into it, it was much later because they were already making money.
That's true.
But also the management of it was local. Now, it meant that the citizenry had acquired sufficient confidence in understanding that they could run something on their own and it could do just as well.
That's the confidence I'm talking about.
Yes.
Now, you should even make it more dramatic.
Yes.
Suppose we had an equity in every sector, so that in health sector, we have hospitals that are doing so well, they are going to Uganda and the rest. You know, Equity and other banks have crossed the borders.
Yes, they have.
So can you imagine if the other sectors in Kenya were doing as well as banks? So that when I go to Nigeria, I can find the Kenyan hotels chain. If I go to Saudi Arabia, I can find the University of Nairobi with a branch there. So when people have confidence in a certain sector, in certain institutions, they tend to grow. And I wish the same confidence they find in Kenya's private sector, finance private sector, like banking, can cascade to the other sectors of the economy. So that we believe we can compete with the Barclays Bank, we can compete with the Standard Chartered. Because that's what happened in the finance sector.
Yeah.
But Equity didn't just compete. Equity does better than them.
So can we also do the same in other sectors, whether it is health, whether it is education, whether it is in trade? Can we do as well as banks have done in this country? They have been I'm very proud of our banking institutions.
But look at the manner in which the citizenry also supported the banks.
That's true.
You only need to look at the clientele base when someone tells you 15 million, you 20 million, it tells you people have confidence. But if you look at the service also, you found that they actually sought to meet the needs of the individuals who banked with them. That is the reason why it grew.
That's true.
Because a local bank will know what the locals
They
need.
speak your language.
Yes, they know you. They understand you.
It's the same reason why you find some supermarkets like the ones you are advertising this morning. Naivas is doing very well because Naivas understands my problems better than maybe a foreign supermarket.
Yes.
And that's why I should mention them, because you know that ShopRite came here and left, but Naivas is growing. Because when I went to those shops, you find the shop has been brought from South Africa with no adjustment to the local market. But if I find, for example, some pieces of cabbages on the floor of Naivas, that's very normal. but if you go to the other supermarkets and find some piece of cabbage, what is that? And I'll give you a good example of a bank. I won't name the bank. It was raining.
Yes.
And this bank decided to hire a shoe shiner, so that before you get to the bank, they clean your shoes.
Oh.
The other bank poured sawdust. So guess which one had more customers? So this bank that was pouring sawdust understood Kenyans very well.
Yes.
That's what we
This
do.
other one was saying, Muna uchafu, you should not get in. So I think one way to
So
make...
that's and that kachuma for
Yes.
Yes.
So I think in addition to the government doing its work in regulation and creating a conducive environment, we also must make people believe in themselves. And I like your argument that we can learn a bank, an international bank, a global bank.
Yes.
And in other sector, we can learn global health sector.
Yes, we can.
We can even make cars. Why do we still have one Nyayo car made in 1980? Why can't we have Kenyan-made cars? Why can't we have Kenyan-made other products, Kenyan shoes and so on? So I think it's the time we started believing in ourselves. And that starts from the political arena. That make people believe themselves, make people believe in the possibilities. You see wonders in this country.
Those guys believe in themselves. They're making money. They don't believe in us.
That is the paradigm shift that we need. So that when a young boy is growing in Shamahoho or in a Karakara, he believes that he will be the next Bill Gates.
Very
Yes.
good.
And we facilitate that
Yes.
to make him the next Bill Gates, the next Elon Musk.
Prof, always a pleasure having you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.